10 years ago, her son disappeared in a mall. She let go of his hand for 3 minutes, just long enough to buy a pretzel. Her 6-year-old son vanished inside a crowded shopping mall and was never seen again. No cameras, no witnesses, no answers. For 10 years, everyone told her move on. But one day, she noticed a door that wasn't there before, and what she found beneath it led her straight into the darkness they all refused to see. Welcome to Minority Struggles. If this story hits home, subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from and what time is right now. Now, let's begin. It was supposed to be a quick trip. Alana Morris had promised her 6-year-old son, Zire, they'd stop by the mall after her shift. He wanted to look at Pokemon cards. She just needed to pick up socks from JCPenney and maybe grab them both a soft pretzel on the way out. It was a Saturday afternoon in late spring, humid but clear, and the Westfield Crossing Mall was packed like it always was before summer hit. They entered through the food court. Zire's hand was sticky from the popsicle she'd let him have on the ride over. He was in his favorite red hoodie, hood up, bouncing beside her as they passed the arcade. She kept telling him, "Don't run off," and he kept saying, "I know, Mom. I know." It wasn't their first time there. He knew the layout like he knew the back of his hand. He also knew the toy store sat just a few doors down from the pretzel stand, and if he could just get a head start, he could scope out what was new before she finished ordering. "Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. I won't go anywhere else. Just look." Alana glanced down the corridor. The toy store wasn't far, maybe 30 feet. She hesitated. She was tired. Her feet hurt. Zire had never caused trouble before. "Okay," she said. "Straight to the store and back. You hear me?" He grinned. "I'll be back before you even finish." And just like that, he ran off, his little sneakers squeaking on the polished tile. She turned to order the pretzels. It took 3 minutes. When she looked up with the warm paper bag in hand, she didn't see him. Her eyes went to the toy store window. No sign of the red hoodie. She walked over, slowly at first, pretending she wasn't worried, peering between shelves. A teenage girl at the register looked up. "Hey, did you see a little boy come in here? Red hoodie, 6 years old." The girl shrugged. "No, sorry. I just got here." Alana's chest tightened. She called his name. No answer. She went to the candy kiosk beside the store. "Did you see a little boy, red hoodie, go by here?" The worker blinked. "Oh no, I don't think so." She called his name again. Louder. Still nothing. Panic surged in her throat. She walked fast, then jogged toward the bathrooms. Called into them. Checked the men's restroom by knocking first and poking her head inside. Nothing. Her voice started to crack. She called security. They arrived within minutes, asked for a description, asked when she last saw him, asked if she was sure he hadn't gone out to the car. "No," she snapped. "I told him to go to the store and come back. I was watching. I only looked away for 3 minutes." Security started walking the corridors. Announcements were made over the intercom. A woman offered to help. A man said he might have seen a kid with a red hoodie running near the side exit. Police arrived. Alana felt like the floor was disappearing beneath her. They showed her the camera feeds, but the one above the hallway between the toy store and the restrooms was blank. Under maintenance, the officer read, "Hasn't worked in weeks." They reviewed the other angles, but there was no clear footage of Zire leaving the building. No sign of a struggle, just him running off and then gone. She stayed until midnight. They searched the trash rooms, the loading docks, every single store. At 1:30 a.m., an officer quietly told her they were expanding the perimeter. A detective introduced himself. He asked if the boy's father was involved, if she had custody papers, if she'd ever had disputes with anyone, if there was any history of instability in the home. By 3 a.m., she was at the police station giving a formal statement. By dawn, news cameras were camped outside her apartment. They showed her photo of Zire on the evening news. 6-year-old Zire Morris reportedly went missing inside Westfield Crossing Mall today during a routine weekend shopping trip. He was last seen wearing a red hoodie and black jeans, with green and white sneakers. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on Zire's bed, clutching his stuffed bear, staring at the drawings on the wall he'd made 2 nights earlier. A superhero with a lightning bolt on his chest. Zire had drawn himself as the hero. She wept until her body gave out. The next day, she went back to the mall. She made her way through the crowd again, though this time her legs felt like concrete. She handed out missing flyers. She stopped strangers and asked them if they remembered seeing him. She spoke with store managers. Most shook their heads. One or two offered forced sympathy. The toy store clerk eventually told her, "You're scaring customers." Alana snapped and had to be escorted out. That was the last time the police treated her like a mother. From that moment forward, she felt like she was being treated like a nuisance. Over the next 2 weeks, volunteers helped search the surrounding woods and roadsides. Bloodhounds were brought in. A river was dredged. Nothing. Then, one morning, a maintenance worker found a red hoodie in a storm drain across the road from the mall. The tag was faded. The left sleeve was ripped. But Alana knew it was his. She knew every stitch. It still smelled like his detergent. Police took it in, logged it as evidence. And then, they told her it was likely a runaway situation. She exploded. "My son is 6. He's 6 years old. He didn't run away." They shrugged, offered to keep the file open. Within a month, the news cycle moved on. Zire's photo was replaced by someone else's. The mall put up balloons for their summer sidewalk sale. Alana sat in her car in the parking lot, hands shaking, watching families walk in like nothing had ever happened. Her son had disappeared inside that building, and no one had any answers. She didn't care what they said. She would never stop looking. Not now. Not ever. Because she knew, deep down, that Zire was still out there, and the mall was hiding something. She just didn't know what yet. But one day she would. Alana Morris never left town. People told her she should. That staying in Tyler, Texas would only keep her stuck in the past. But Zire went missing here. And if there was even the smallest chance he was still somewhere, alive, then she needed to be close. She never changed her number. Never changed her email. And every year, on the anniversary of his disappearance, she returned to Westfield Crossing Mall. Same entrance. Same corridor. Same sick feeling in her stomach. For the first year, she brought flyers. The second year, candles. By the third, she stopped expecting anyone else to show up. The police had all but stopped returning her calls. The case was technically still open, but she knew what that meant. Ignored. They called it a cold case. She called it stolen life. By year 4, she stopped trying to explain herself. People didn't understand. Friends drifted. Employers grew impatient with her grief. Eventually, she stopped working entirely and lived off a modest life insurance payout from her late mother. It wasn't much, but it allowed her to keep the apartment and buy groceries. She lived quietly, alone, except for Saturdays. Every Saturday, without fail, she went to the mall. At first, she tried to retrace the steps exactly. Food court, pretzel stand, toy store, restroom hallway. But eventually, she'd just sit, watch, notice everything. There was a door she never remembered seeing before, next to the now-closed massage parlor. It was marked employees only. There were service elevators she asked about, maintenance access only, they said. A stairwell that seemed to go nowhere behind a metal gate. She started sketching the floor plan from memory. She kept an old notebook in her purse and mapped out everything she saw. Store closures, renovations, changed layouts. Every time something changed, she noticed. She began collecting mall blueprints from the public library's archive. The mall had been built in the late 1970s, expanded twice. There were rumors of abandoned service tunnels from the original layout. One article from 1982 mentioned subterranean loading routes that were never fully completed. She asked the city planning office for access to blueprints. The clerk raised an eyebrow, but printed them anyway. That's when she saw it. A corridor, clearly marked on a 1981 blueprint, labeled Sub-B corridor, running directly beneath the west wing of the mall. It began at the back of the original food court and ended nowhere. Just stopped at the edge of the page. She took it home and circled it in red ink. Sub-B. She'd never heard those words before. Never seen it referenced in any of the police reports or mall security footage. She Googled it. Nothing. She went back to the mall the next Saturday and asked the current mall manager about it. Sub-B, he repeated. Never heard of it. She handed him a copy of the blueprint. He stared at it. This must be outdated. That wing was remodeled in the late 90s. Any of those tunnels were probably filled in or sealed. Sealed, she repeated. Yes, sealed. No one uses them anymore. He tried to sound confident, but his eyes darted toward the west corridor. That night, she couldn't sleep. She laid the blueprint on the floor of her apartment and spread her old notes beside it. Her sketches, her observations. One hallway in particular, just past the closed-down cell phone repair shop, was always locked. She'd never seen it open, never seen a worker enter. It was near the very spot Zire had vanished. For years, she had walked past it, hundreds of times. Suddenly, it wasn't just a door anymore. It was a question. By the 10th year, Alana had nothing left to lose. No job, no close friends, no reputation to protect. People already thought she was obsessive, maybe even unstable. She didn't care. She came to the mall early on a rainy Saturday in March, brought a coffee, wore a plain black hoodie. She sat on her usual bench near the food court, eyes on the hallway near the old elevator bank. That's when it happened. A young janitor, maybe 20, new face, rolled a mop bucket past her and stopped in front of the no-entry hallway door. He fumbled with his keys. Alana stood up. "Need help?" she asked casually. He looked startled. "No, ma'am. Just forgot which key opens this one." She smiled. "Is that for storage?" He shrugged. "Old tunnel or something. They told me not to bother going in. Just mop the entrance and keep moving." She leaned slightly. On his key ring, one tag caught her eye. Sub B, no access. She stared at it. "May I see that?" she asked, pointing. "Oh, sure," he said awkwardly, handing it to her. She memorized the key shape, the tag, the placement on the ring. The janitor eventually unlocked the hallway, propped the door open with a cleaning cart, and left it ajar while he wiped the frame. Alana peeked inside. A stairwell. Dark. Concrete. Rusted railings. A single flickering bulb overhead. The janitor turned to grab his bucket. Alana stepped away quickly. That night, she made 2 stops. The locksmith and the copy shop. She had the blueprint printed again in high contrast. Highlighted the corridor. Circled the door. Then she held the duplicate key in her palm. Her hand shook. 10 years of unanswered questions. 10 years of walking those halls. 10 years of being told to move on. Now there was a door, and she finally had a way in. The key was heavier than she expected. Alana held it in her palm. The next morning, the tiny label, Sub B, no access, catching the light from her kitchen window. It looked unremarkable, no different than any janitor's key, and yet, it carried the weight of 10 years of silence. 10 years of being dismissed, of reliving the same 3 minutes on repeat. Her son, a red hoodie, a toy store, and then nothing. This time, she wouldn't just walk them all. She was going in. She waited for Monday, the quietest day. Most of the high schoolers would be at class, and the lunch crowd would be thin. She wore plain clothes, a dark windbreaker with a maintenance-style tag she printed and laminated herself, and carried a janitor's bucket with a mop sticking out. She'd taken her time studying the behavior of mall staff, how they moved, where they parked carts. It didn't need to be perfect, just good enough to avoid being questioned. She entered through the back delivery corridor, a route she'd never taken before, but now knew thanks to years of watching. She walked calmly, eyes down. No one stopped her. The door sat at the far end of the west corridor, where the old cell phone repair shop used to be before it shut down during the pandemic. Now, the storefront was empty, windows covered in brown butcher paper. The hallway next to it was narrow, dim, unmarked, except for a peeling sticker that once read, "Authorized personnel only." Alana's fingers trembled as she slid the key into the lock. It clicked easily. Too easily. She paused, took a breath, and pushed the door open. The air that hit her was damp and heavy, thick with dust and something older like rusted water pipes and mildew. A single overhead bulb flickered to life, casting pale yellow light onto a concrete stairwell that descended steeply. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. Graffiti marked the upper walls. A shattered fluorescent light fixture hung loose above the landing. She didn't hesitate. She stepped inside and pulled the door closed behind her. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Her shoes clicked down the steps slowly, deliberately. Each one brought her deeper beneath the mall she had memorized from above. There were no sounds, no humming ventilation, No distant footsteps. Just silence. And the occasional drip of water in the distance. At the bottom of the stairs, a rusted steel door stood half open. She pressed it and it creaked wide. The tunnel beyond looked like something out of a forgotten city, wide enough for a small vehicle, with crumbling tile along the base of the walls and pipes running overhead. There were broken push carts, discarded mannequins, and remnants of old store signage. Faded logos from the 80s and 90s, relics of a time when this space had been used and then abandoned. She walked slowly, shining her flashlight against the walls. Then she froze. There, tucked behind an old delivery crate, was something unmistakable. A child's sneaker, blue and green. Tiny. She dropped to her knees, heart pounding. The laces were torn. The sole was cracked. But she knew that shoe. She had the other one still at home. She kept it in a memory box under her bed. It was Zire's. No doubt. Her stomach twisted. She stood up, turned in a slow circle, and suddenly everything around her looked sharper. A tattered child's blanket. Empty food cans. Crayons scattered near the base of a wall. A piece of paper with a faded cartoon character scribbled in purple marker. He had been here. Or someone had. She kept walking deeper. The air grew colder. The walls damp. The overhead lights were long dead now, so she followed the beam of her flashlight, step by cautious step. Then, after a left turn past a collapsed shelf of plastic trays, she saw something that made her stop cold. Another door, but this one wasn't man-made. A jagged break in the tunnel wall, where the concrete gave way to earth. An opening. A tunnel. But this one wasn't part of the mall. It was carved into raw rock. She stepped closer, shining her light in. It stretched beyond her beam's reach, narrow and sloping downward. The floor was dirt packed down by time. There were faint shoe prints in the dust. Small, child-sized, and others, larger. The tunnel led away from them all, away from the structure, downward. Alana swallowed hard. She reached out and touched the wall. Cold, damp. She turned back once, looked behind her at the long concrete passage, then faced forward. She couldn't go back. Not yet. She squeezed her flashlight and stepped into the darkness. The cave swallowed the sound of her footsteps. It grew tighter and then opened into a wide chamber. Her light flickered across the stone walls. There were boxes here, sleeping bags, a dented metal pot, a string of Christmas lights, long dead, sagging between rocks. And on one side, a crumbling cot with blankets stacked neatly. Whoever had been here had lived here. Recently, she approached a small stack of belongings in the corner. A cup, an old coloring book, a deck of cards rubber banded together. And then she saw it. A torn drawing, creased and stained. A child's stick figure art. A woman. Curly hair. Next to it, a smaller figure with a red hoodie. It said "Me" and "Mom" in crooked letters. Alana dropped to her knees. Her chest heaved. Her breath caught. She pressed the picture to her chest and cried. It had been 10 years. But Zire had been here. She could feel it. She could see him in every scribble, every mark. This wasn't just an old shelter. It was a child's world, and her son had built it. She rose slowly, flashlight trembling in her hand, and scanned the walls for another path forward. A fresh trail of footprints led deeper. Her heart thudded as she whispered the only word she could manage. Zire. Alana followed the footprints in silence, deeper into the cave system. Her flashlight beam quivered against the stone floor, casting long, twitching shadows along the walls. She no longer noticed the cold. Her heart beat so loudly it drowned out the sound of her footsteps. Every twist of the tunnel made her stomach lurch. Fear and hope tangled so tightly she couldn't tell one from the other. The trail curved left into another narrow corridor, this one reinforced with crumbling wooden supports. Old planks leaned haphazardly, mold creeping up from the floor. A faint chemical smell hung in the air, like fuel and rotting wood. Alana pressed a sleeve to her nose and moved slowly. She passed another chamber. This one was darker, smaller, a room carved crudely from the stone. Inside were more signs of life. Wrappers, plastic bottles, a thin mattress pad, and an old grocery crate turned into a table. A candle had melted down into the stone itself. She knelt beside it, shining her light around. There was something else, writing, scratched onto the rock wall with what looked like a nail. ZM was here. She reached out and touched the letters. Zire Morris. Her hand shook. How long had he been down here? Who else had been with him? Was he still here now? The thought came crashing into her. What if she was too late? What if she was only walking through a ghost home? A low, distant sound snapped her out of it. Movement. Rocks shifting. A footstep. She turned off her flashlight instantly, crouched low, heart pounding in her ears. She waited. Listened. The sound came again. Not far. Careful. Heavy. Someone was there. She turned the light back on, this time shielding it with her palm to dim the beam, and moved quietly toward the sound. The tunnel bent again and opened into another chamber, larger than the rest. It looked lived in, not like a den or a place to hide, but like someone had made it home. A desk cracked but upright. A battery-powered lantern on its side. Clothes folded in a stack. Blankets. And on one of the walls, dozens of drawings pinned with nails. Children's drawings. Her hand flew to her mouth. Some were new. Others were wrinkled and yellowed. There were pictures of trees, of faces of buildings. One showed a mall entrance. Another was labeled Christmas 2018 and had a stick figure tree. There was no mistaking it. Zire had drawn these. Over years. She stepped further in and then heard it again. A footstep. Behind her this time. She turned fast. In the far edge of the room, barely visible in the shadow, stood a figure. Thin, medium height, face half obscured by a scarf or cloth tied around the neck. He didn't move. Neither did she. Her mouth went dry. She lowered the flashlight, keeping it angled to the ground. I'm not here to hurt you, she said gently. I'm just looking. No reply. She stepped forward slowly. My name is Alana. I'm looking for someone. My son. His name is Zire. He disappeared when he was 6 years old. At the mall. 10 years ago. The figure shifted slightly. Then, in a low, raw voice, what color hoodie? Her throat clenched. Red, she whispered. It was red, with a little white lightning bolt on the back. He loved that thing. A long pause. Then the voice again, hoarse, cracking. I remember. Alana took a step forward, eyes stinging. She could see more now, the curve of his face, the trembling in his hands. It's you, she whispered. Zire. He flinched slightly, like the word hurt to hear. I don't know, he said quietly. Her heart broke right there. 10 years. Who had told him he wasn't who he was? She moved closer, slowly. I think you do, she said softly. You used to draw me. I found the picture. You called me Mom. He didn't speak. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. It was worn and faded, the matching sneaker to the one she'd found upstairs. She knelt and placed it on the ground between them. I've kept this for 10 years, she said. Every day, just hoping you'd still be somewhere, that I didn't lose you forever. The figure stared at it, then slowly stepped forward. 1 step, 2, and then he collapsed into her arms. The moment shattered everything. The years, the silence, the nightmares. He cried like he was 6 again. She held him like she'd never let go. Her hands trembled as she cradled his head. She could feel how thin he was. How fragile. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I wanted to come back. But he said you didn't want me anymore. Alana's face twisted in horror. Who told you that? He just shook his head. He took me. Said I wasn't good. Said I had to stay down here. And when he left, I was scared to go back. She held him tighter. You didn't do anything wrong. You hear me? Nothing. He nodded slowly. They stayed like that, on the cold stone floor, surrounded by drawings and silence. Finally, she stood up. We're going home, she said. He blinked. You remember where home is? She asked. He nodded slowly. Our building. The yellow door. 3rd floor. She smiled through tears. That's right. Zire stood. His knees shook, but he was ready. She led him back through the tunnels, flashlight flickering in front of them. It was a long walk, but she didn't rush. Every step, he held her hand. And for the first time in 10 years, she wasn't walking alone. Alana held Zaire's hand the entire way back through the tunnel, as if letting go might make him vanish again. His palm was clammy, fingers bony and trembling with every step. He didn't speak much. He looked at the ground, avoiding her eyes, his shoulders tight as if expecting something else, to appear behind them. She paused once, halfway up the final stairwell beneath them all. "You okay?" He nodded, but didn't look at her. His voice was quiet, hollow. "Do they still have cinnamon pretzels?" Alana choked on her breath. "Yeah," she whispered, eyes stinging. "They do." They emerged into the empty hallway near the service corridor. The mall had just closed. Fluorescent lights buzzed above their heads, and distant echoes of brooms on tile filled the air. Zire flinched at every sound. His hoodie, too large, clearly scavenged, hung off his shoulders. Alana pulled her coat tighter around him and led him to the side exit. Outside, the parking lot was mostly empty. She opened her car door and paused before letting him in. His eyes scanned the rows, his body still tight with tension. "I have to tell someone," she said gently. "The police." Zire froze. "No," he said immediately, backing up. "No cops." Alana held her hands out calmly. Hey, you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." He shook his head hard. "They were looking for him. The man who took me. He worked here. He knew people. He said they'd send me to a place for bad kids if I told." Alana's heart dropped. "What was his name?" Zire hesitated. "He called himself Lou, but I don't think that was his name. He used different ones. I think he used to clean things." Alana nodded slowly, tucking the information away. "Okay, you don't have to talk to anyone right now. Let's just go home, all right?" The ride was silent. She watched him through the rearview mirror. He kept his head down, staring at his fingers, his leg bouncing with nerves. Every red light made him tense. Every car that pulled up beside them made him shrink deeper into the seat. When they reached the apartment, Alana fumbled with the keys. She hadn't been inside the building with anyone in so long. It felt strange unlocking the door for someone else. But the moment Zire stepped inside, his head turned slowly, eyes scanning the tiny living room, the old photos still on the wall, the Spider-Man blanket folded on the couch. She watched something change in his face. He stepped toward the bookshelf, picked up a framed picture. It was the last one she ever took of him, missing 2 front teeth, smiling wide in front of the TV. He touched the glass like he didn't believe it was real. "I kept everything," she whispered. "Your drawings, your old shoes. I even kept your cereal bowls." He didn't say anything. She led him to the bathroom. He stared at the mirror, at himself. Alana stood in the doorway, hand to her chest, watching him trace his reflection like he didn't recognize the person looking back. His face was sharper now, thinner. A long faint scar curved above his right eyebrow. He touched it gently. He whispered, "It's really me." She nodded, biting back tears. After he showered, she gave him a pair of her brother's old sweatpants and a hoodie. They hung off his frame, but he didn't care. He sat on the couch, hugging a throw pillow, while she made soup in the kitchen. When she placed a bowl in front of him, he stared at it. Steam curled upward. He lifted the spoon, but didn't eat. He looked up at her. "Why didn't you stop looking?" Alana sat beside him. "Because I'm your mother," she said simply. "And they told me to accept you were gone. But I knew. I felt that you were still out there. I never had proof. Just my gut. And I refused to let go of that." Zire blinked slowly. His eyes welled. He didn't cry, but she could see it hitting him. Everything he'd missed. Everything she had held on to. "I thought you forgot me," he whispered. "He said you gave up." Alana reached over and held his hand again. "I never gave up. Not for a second." He finally took a bite of the soup. That night, he slept on the couch. She offered him the bed, but he refused. He said he needed to be where he could see the door. Just in case. She nodded, left the hallway light on, stayed up all night listening to him breathe. By morning, she called the police. She didn't tell them everything. Not yet, but enough to start the process. She gave his name, his age, and said, "He's home now. My son." He came back. Within hours, officers were at her door. Zire refused to speak. She shielded him. The news spread fast. Missing boy found after 10 years in East Texas. Mother claims son survived in underground tunnels. Mall silent amid questions about hidden access points. Alana refused interviews. She didn't need the attention. She didn't need the noise. All she needed was for Zire to sleep without flinching, to eat a full plate, to laugh again. He didn't say much about the man who took him. He just said, he left one day, never came back. I stayed hidden. The authorities searched the tunnels under the mall. They found everything. The drawings, the makeshift shelter, the tunnel leading into the mountain cave system, and an old staff ID with the name Lewis Keener, former maintenance crew, fired 11 years ago for unprofessional behavior. No one had followed up. No one had connected him to the child who vanished 3 days later. Alana stood at the edge of the search zone, arms crossed, watching officers and officials swarm the tunnel entrance. It didn't matter what they found now. She had already done what none of them had. She had found her son. She had gone where they wouldn't. In the mall, the place that tried to bury her boy under fluorescent lights and silence, would never be able to hide again. The reporters didn't leave her alone for weeks. After the police confirmed the boy found in Alana Morris's apartment was Zire Morris, the same 6-year-old who vanished from Westfield Crossing Mall 10 years prior, the story exploded. Lost boy found beneath local mall after a decade. Mother solves cold case police abandoned in 2013. Cave system discovered beneath Tyler Mall tied to missing child case. But Alana didn't grant interviews. She wasn't interested in applause. Not from strangers, not from reporters, not even from the same police department that once accused her of making things up. They knocked on her door politely now. Some even apologized. She didn't answer the door. Zire came first. He spent the first few weeks barely leaving the apartment. He slept in the living room with the light on and the front door bolted. At night, he sometimes curled up on the floor rather than the couch. He didn't like beds. He didn't like ceilings. He didn't speak much, but he drew constantly. Alana bought him stacks of notebooks and markers, and each day he filled them with people, faces, places. Sometimes his drawings made her cry. A man with sharp teeth, a ladder going down into a hole, a face that was just eyes and shadows. Other times it was him and her, stick figures, Z and Mom. She hung those on the fridge. Therapists came and went, so made him shut down. One finally reached him by talking about light and space and letting him draw instead of answer questions. One night he asked her, "Do you still have my baby teeth?" She blinked at him. "What? You said you kept everything." She nodded slowly. "I do." He gave a tiny nod back. "Good." That was it. But it meant everything. By spring, he started going outside. Just for a few minutes at first. On the porch, then to the corner store with her, then eventually to the basketball court down the street where little kids played. He didn't play. He just sat on the bleachers, watching. Alana gave him space. She still kept the hallway light on every night. Meanwhile, the city exploded in outrage. The police department scrambled to explain why the investigation had been dropped so early. Why no one checked the old tunnel systems beneath them all. Why no one followed up on Lewis Keener, a former employee fired 2 weeks before Zire disappeared, who had never been properly investigated. Keener was now the subject of a manhunt, but he hadn't been seen in years. The last trace of him was a motel room he'd checked in under a false name in Alabama. Inside, they found receipts from hardware stores, camping supplies, burner phones, and an old red hoodie. No fingerprints, no DNA, no leads. Zire never asked about him. When Alana tried, he said softly, "He's gone." And that was the end of it. The mall was condemned by the end of the summer. After the underground tunnels were officially mapped and declared structurally unsafe, the city ordered it closed permanently. Protesters had already gathered for weeks, calling for accountability, justice, answers. Alana never attended. She sat on her balcony, watering her plants, listening to the noise from a distance. She wasn't interested in the noise. She had her son, and that was everything. A few months later, she received a letter, handwritten, from a woman named Cheryl White, whose daughter went missing at age 7 in a mall in Missouri. She'd seen Alana's story on the news and felt something unlock inside her. She asked how Alana had kept going, what had made her keep looking when everyone else stopped. Alana wrote her back, and soon other letters came. Mothers, fathers, siblings, all asking the same question. How did you know? She didn't know how to answer at first, but eventually she realized she did. She'd known because she felt it, in her bones, in her breath, in the ache that never went away, that Zire was still out there, that he hadn't left her, that something had happened that no one else wanted to believe. So she began organizing. She turned her living room into a tiny resource hub. Printouts, maps, lists of long-term missing children. She partnered with a small nonprofit and, with Zire's blessing, started one of her own. Zire's Way. Its mission was simple: support for families who refuse to give up, legal guidance, mental health resources, public pressure, and most of all, community. Zire didn't want to be the face of anything, but he offered to help draw the logo. It was a flashlight shining on a child's name scrawled in crayon. He signed it with a small Z in the corner. 1 year after his return, the city of Tyler held a private gathering. It wasn't a ceremony or a press event, just a quiet gathering at a local community center. A few dozen families, a few officials. Some reporters kept their distance. Zire agreed to speak. He wore his new black hoodie, sleeves pushed up, hair grown out. He stood in front of the small crowd, hands shaking, and said only one thing. She didn't give up on me, so I didn't give up on myself. That was all, but it was enough. As they left the building, Alana held his hand the same way she did in the tunnel. The wind was soft that night. The sky, clear. The city buzzed in the distance, but for them, everything felt still. And just before they got into the car, Zire turned to look back at the crowd through the glass doors. "They still think he'll get caught?" he asked. Alana didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not." Zire nodded. "But you're free now," she added. He looked at her, really looked at her. And then, for the first time since he'd come home, he smiled. Not a flicker, not a twitch, but a full, warm, quiet smile. He stepped into the car, and Alana knew the justice she waited for might never come. But the healing? It had finally begun.